Well, copper theft is on the rise in the region. We told you last month that Fort Smith police arrested 4 people accused of stealing copper wires from a local business. Well, now an internet and phone provider serving parts of northwest Arkansas is offering a $10,000 reward after seeing that rise in theft. 5 News reporter Taylor Howard spoke with the company and a Fayetteville recycling center about why thieves keep targeting copper and why this is impacting entire communities.
This whole box is probably worth about $25,000.
Copper is worth about $6 a pound right now, and Vaughn Recycling co-owner Levi Vaughn says when copper prices go up, theft usually does too.
Copper is just such a high-value material, and it's everywhere. Modern society cannot exist without copper, so it's everywhere. It's easy to get.
Kinetic provides internet and phone services to many Arkansans, and they say copper thefts have become a big problem here. The company says more than 2,000 feet of communication lines has been stolen in Washington and Madison counties over the past few weeks.
We've seen an explosive growth, several 100% higher than the normal average.
The communication lines look like this and are what you'll often see in rural areas.
They'll either burn it, which is illegal, or they'll strip it with a pocket knife.
After that, they'll often try to sell the copper for cash.
This is not a victimless crime. Every single copper theft has life-impacting ramifications. It affects businesses, it threatens public safety, and it cuts off families from 911.
Which is his biggest concern, and a concern raised by Fort Smith police.
What worries me most is that we have customers, fellow Arkansans out there, that if they need life-saving support from 911, they can't reach that. And that is a significant issue that all Arkansans should take seriously.
Back at Vaughn Recycling, anyone selling copper has to provide an ID, vehicle information, and leave a thumbprint. Vaughn says those records help law enforcement investigate thefts and track any stolen material. The Washington County Sheriff's Office asks anyone who sees suspicious activity to report it.
These criminals are operating usually at night in not well-lit areas on the back roads. They often don't have marked trucks, and they're not wearing personal identification or Kinetic shirts.
Kinetic is offering a $10,000 reward for information leading to an arrest or conviction. In Fayetteville, covering news where you live, Taylor Howard, 5 News.
Again, please say if you see any suspicious activity, report it. Kinetic is accepting tips through its hotline number you see right here at the bottom of your screen. Well, a week after a 16-year-old was shot and killed in Fort Smith, police are still looking for a suspect. Jasmine Johnston is wanted on first-degree murder and aggravated robbery. Police say she's considered armed and dangerous. The other suspect, 18-year-old Donnie Warner, is expected back in court tomorrow morning in Fort Smith. He also faces first-degree murder and aggravated robbery. Well, Fort Smith City directors are weighing tonight whether the city should issue fines to people or businesses transporting homeless people to the city. Director Neil Martin says he's heard claims from first responders about homeless people being bused into the city from somewhere else. His ordinance would mirror ones that are already in places like Joplin, Missouri. And some directors say that will help alleviate a strain on homeless resources. Hope Campus spoke at tonight's meeting to provide perspective.
We had the Lavaca Police Department. They did drop off someone last week. We've had Conway Behavioral Health. They have dropped off a few people, but we try to mitigate that. And I've actually called them twice to, try to fight against that. Who utilize our services and drop people off the most is the Fort Smith Police Department, which we consider them as a partner because we want to be a community partner here in Fort Smith.
Directors are expected to vote on the ordinance next week. They will also weigh whether to take ownership of 3 historic cemeteries the residents have complained are in poor condition. Fayetteville City Council, meanwhile, discussed ways to help the city's housing crisis. The council's looking at 3 different changes to amend development codes. One proposal would reduce minimum lot widths in some zoning districts, giving developers more flexibility to subdivide land. Another proposal would expand the Planning Commission's authority to reduce the number of required parking spaces in new developments.
Concerns had arisen in many parts of town, particularly where there were student housing complexes, where many of those developers took the full reductions and where those reductions constituted a larger number of parking places for every percent of parking that was not built. So reducing 10% of a 100-unit building versus 10% of a 10-unit building, you're inherently having much more parking that is not going accounted for.
The last proposal would update the city's definition of a through lot, or a property with street frontage on both sides. Council could vote on those changes as early as next week. Well, an immigrant advocacy group is explaining its call for a boycott of the Taneytown Grape Festival. The 127th annual festival is set for next month at St. Joseph Catholic Church. IRE says the boycott is over Taneytown Police joining the 287G program with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The program allows local officers to help enforce federal immigration laws. The group says having Taneytown officers provide security at the event raises concerns for some families. Now, the festival responded on social media saying it is organized by St. Joseph Catholic Church and it's separate from the city of Taneytown. The organizers say some city officers are hired for security, but the festival does not fund the city. You can find both of those full statements on our website, 5newsonline.com. Well, Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders held a press conference today to announce that Arkansas has jumped to the top of a new national scorecard on religious liberty. The study done by First Liberty Institute looked at 50 legal protections across 20 safeguards, from schools and healthcare to family law and worship, and gave Arkansas an 89.2% score. That's 4 points more than Tennessee, which came in second, and the only two states to earn an excellent rating.
Jesus commands us to live out our faith boldly, and the Constitution protects our rights to do so. And in this administration, we don't just believe that Jesus is our living hope. We will always stand up for the rights of Arkansans who believe the same.
The group says Arkansas moved up after passing House Bill 1615 tied to wedding ceremony objections. Meanwhile, the governor announced she is again taking her annual trade mission to Europe. She'll be in the UK, Belgium, and Ireland later this week. Sanders will be speaking at aerospace industries and in panels, and will meet with companies like Lockheed Martin and General Dynamics. Well, tensions continue to rise in the Middle East as the U.S. conducted airstrikes against Iranian military sites for a fourth consecutive night, and Iran targeted U.S. allies in the region. Jesse Mitchell has the latest.
The U.S. military reinstated a blockade on Iranian ports late Tuesday. In a statement, U.S. Central Command said more than 20 of its Navy ships and hundreds of military aircraft are operating across the region. The return of the blockade comes as the U.S. conducted airstrikes on military targets in Iran for a fourth consecutive night. President Trump continues to express disappointment in the regime and what he says was its refusal to make a deal when it had the opportunity.
I gave them a chance. I wanted to give them a chance at making a deal. You know, we had a deal 2 days ago. It was done. And then all of a sudden, they couldn't do it. They didn't like something about the deal. They couldn't do it.
President Trump also said Tuesday he's dropping his threat of tolls in the Strait of Hormuz in favor of Gulf nations investing in the U.S. instead.
And they would love to invest more money in the United States at record amounts, and that would be very acceptable. And this way, there's no fee. I don't like the concept of a fee.
On Capitol Hill, lawmakers from both sides of the political aisle expressed further concern about the president making decisions regarding Iran without congressional involvement.
Now, he should be working with Congress, but you got to work with Congress if you want our help. And he has sort of a go-it-alone approach, which works for a short time but does not work in the long run.
Iran's president rejected Tuesday what he called President Trump's rude language against his country and warned the regime would retaliate. Earlier in the day, Tehran released footage of what it said were fresh airstrikes against U.S. allies in the region. Among the nations targeted, Bahrain and Kuwait. Jesse Mitchell, CBS News, New York.
The U.S. Department of Treasury said in a statement today it is committed to disrupting and degrading Iran's illicit financial activities and has frozen more than $130 million tied to the central bank of Iran.